Could the UK yet conduct negotiations a superior Brexit transactions in the Europe Association? And which precisely happens at such a trading talks? For as called Brexiters, the transactions win t individual the UK quite of the EU. Time for Remainers, they just wish the UK to remain in the Economical and Policy Association. And so it now looks hardly how the MPs in the building of House of Commons will behind the Brexit transactions while they eventually get to voice on it in the 1 week start January 14th. In the UK due to keep the EU on March 29, 2019, the tool how a not deal Brexit is more a opportunity. The option is how Theresa May can get future acquiescence of the EU to do her Brexit transactions more than appetizing. Time EU leaders controlled how out recent 1 week, May told how negotiations on future purification would go on. If these continuing negotiations among UK and EU trading negotiating teams do eventually indicate how Brussels does propose more than is the material for chip bollocks or placement a rate. But which precisely conducted location at such a trading negotiations? And which are the top tactic to pursue? 3x top standard trading negotiators get us over the blocked doors. Take yours own sandwiches, and lot of them, is seemingly a top end. Wendy Cutler consumable nearly 3 many decades as a mediator in the office space of the U.S. trading member. Her consultation to both of the UK and EU negotiations teams would be, conduct yours cards shut to yours trunk before the recent time. Thou never wish to show yours lower link before it's the late, since if you shall yours brush, and if it's not the late, thou'll end up possessing to offer more than off, she says. Ms. Cutler adds how as the March 29th last date for the UK to keep the EU gets coming, the negotiators will perhaps begin to show several previous invisible versatility. I do discover how as you get nearer to the last date, human beings begin to believe on the implications on not possessing a transactions thou eventually see how flexibilities are shown while though a 1 week over how would include been out of the issue. Everything else happens about the negotiations spreadsheet, Ms. Cutler adds how lie is never reasonable. Confidence is the largest essential item, she says. Else ex-trading mediator is Stephanie Mead, who was portion of the New Zealand crew for the Planet Trading Organizations as called Doha trading negotiations behind in 2006. Looking behind on the strained events in the summer of how year, she says how a little team of countries had excited to the verdant chamber wherever deals at the WTO's staff in Geneva are eventually soldered. Substantially they castle the doorway of the verdant chamber and don't let nobody out before they've go up in thing, she says. It's the fight of depletion wherever by the end all is so weary and wants it to end how they are readily to do a trade-off. Sounding how the negotiations would go on all overnight, Ms. Med and her kiwi fruit associate had stockpiled sandwiches how they had purchased of a store at Geneva's major rail plant. We requested our negotiators to be faithful, quite to do it via, she says. If thou re so fed and flooded you include limitless power to adhere to yours red channel. Sadly for Ms. Med and her associate, the Doha trading negotiations eventually unsuccessful to achieve entreaty, in spite creature so shut, she says. So shut, in reality, how she had purchased a bottling of sparkling wine. We ended up potable it by the shores of the pond in Geneva as the sun came up, in the horrible frustration how we hadn't go the transactions made, says Ms. Med. Ms. Cutler says how the issue for trading negotiators these days is how trading has be really policy. Pleasant human beings at household is now more than essential rather than remarkable a transactions overseas, she says. She adds how 30 years back, 80% of her period as a trading mediator was hard to thresh out agreements in overseas teams, in the otherwise consumable address national concerns. By the period she leftward the U.S. trading division in 2016, she says how 60% of her period was consumable speaking to U.S. business community, labor groups, political community and some by the government agencies. In a verdict how key points the quandary Theresa May many faces, Ms. Cutler adds, openly, the treaty is not cost the document it's spelled on if you don't include national supporting for the transactions thou re-earning household. Roderick Abbott is capable to propose a distinctive prospect on the negotiations among the UK and EU, since he has previous treated for both of their trading negotiations teams. The Brit was involved by the UK's later Executive Board of Trading in the 1960s, up connecting the later Europe Economical Societies, this predecessor to the EU's, trading division in Brussels in 1973. He says how the basic issue among the two sides is how the UK ever wants versatility, time the EU wants waterproof legislative agreements. Yet, Mr. Abbott, who now planned at the Europe Centre for World Policy Economics, yet believes how the two sides can surmount their differences while it comes to achieving a divorce rate community. This EU is as acute to escape a not deal as the UK, he says. If both of sides wish down there will ever be a way via to the negotiators. The issue is ever, did I get quite out of giver off to lot? Political community include to understand how the issue for them is not do you love it, but do you believe it's superior rather than the option.